In this instruction video, we're going to cover the very important topic of how to write introductions to online articles the right way. It's very tempting to just jump in with both feet and write your article because you have all the information uh, that you would like to talk about. You have all this stuff in your mind and you just want to get down to business and lay it all out. I understand where you're coming from, but please understand that if your introduction is wrong or sends out the wrong impression, people are not going to read your article. Even if they do go through with it, chances are they might get confused or walk away with the wrong impression. There's just so many things that could go wrong. It's really important to understand the different variations of introductions. Don't think that one article, like for example, SEO related materials and product reviews and roundups, along with product overviews and buyer's guides and complete online resources, are one and the same. Your introduction, at the very least, should track the objective that you have in mind. Different articles have different objectives. For example, if you are writing a review of the best hamster wheels, your objective is to lay out the different factors that you've used to recommend certain products. The idea is when the reader goes through the factors that you use, they will find your material trustworthy enough to click on your link and buy something. This is how reviews work. They have a certain structure that builds trust. If it is clear from the reader's point of view that you know what you're talking about, they're more likely to trust your recommendations. So when they click through, they end up on Amazon. When they buy something, you earn a commission, or the client that you wrote the article for earns a commission. Pretty straightforward. But this type of article has to be written in a different way than this type of article, which is a resource article. When people are looking for keywords that have low competition but have high monthly search volume, they would look for this type of article. But its information is presented in a way that is very different from review articles. The key here is to understand that the objective of the article must set how you present your introduction. If people can't tell the difference between a review roundup article that you write and a typical informative article on a specific topic, you're going to get your wires crossed. People can't quite understand what you're talking about, so they're going to click away. At the very best, even if they do stick around, they're not going to do what you want them to do, which is to click and buy something. That's the whole point of review articles and buyer's guides. In the case of informative articles, you want them to click on ads. Maybe you or your client has AdSense ads on the side, and you would want you want your visitors to be so taken in and impressed by the stuff that you're talking about that they would click on a link, join your newsletter, or do all sorts of other stuff that eventually benefits whoever commissioned your article or sends money directly to your account. That's how it works. The article has to produce an effect. But for that to happen, you have to send the right signals with your introduction. I'm going to break down the different types of articles out there and the best way to introduce the topics that you're going to be talking about. The first type of article is your typical resource or informative article. This type of article teaches people how to do something. It can be how to recover from a Google penalty, how to change the batteries on a certain tool or appliance you're using at home, or how to apply for a certain type of loan. These informative articles lay out the steps that you need to do to solve a problem. The key is to quickly identify the problem and present a solution. This is very clear. How to recover from any Google penalty. The problem is the Google penalty, and the solution, of course, is recovering from it. So the key here is to introduce the topic in a clear, concise manner that helps build authority and credibility for your article. You don't want people to read the first few paragraphs and walk away with the conclusion that you don't know what you're talking about. So the first few lines, you're going to have to establish your expertise. It's all about layout. You have to present the information in such a way that the person reading your materials will be confident that they know what you're talking about. So the key here is opening with the challenge. So SEO is a complex game full of surprises. So it's really important to set up the reader that even if they have the best intentions and they invest in SEO, they'll still end up with a penalty. You are setting up the problem, and then it follows up with an example of how that problem typically happens to people. So the website suddenly drops in traffic, and once the problem is set up, the article goes into fixing the penalty. And once that is established, along with the consequences of what would happen if a person doesn't fix the problem, the article then makes a promise. It highlights that getting out of this issue is possible, but you need to do something first. And then it makes a broad overview of what to expect. This is how you set up informative article introductions. You identify the problem, you give a broad example of how it plays out, and you talk about what you should be doing or prioritizing and why it's important to prioritize. And then you let the reader know in the next line that there is a solution, but you have to be careful but you have to be careful, or you have to go through certain steps, and then you make your promise. A lot of writers write introductions that talk about stuff that the reader already knows. The reader doesn't want an overview of how SEO works. That's not the kind of article this is. But if somebody doesn't know how to write an effective intro, They would go into how important SEO is, or on-page SEO, or compared to off-page SEO. They talk about stuff that tries to impress the reader, but the reader already knows that stuff. Instead, the reason why they entered the search phrase that's related to the title is because they are suffering from a specific problem. Let them know that you understand that by the way you set up your introduction. They're not looking to read stuff about stuff they already know. Another type of intro involves product reviews. The great thing about this review is that it zeroes in on the problem that's solved by the product that this article reviews. These are for cat litter boxes that are intended for small spaces. This is a very specific product. So this means that when you are writing a review, your focus should be on the small space. The wrong introduction would focus on what litter boxes are, the history of litter boxes, what litter boxes are for. I hope you can see I hope you can see why those approaches are wrong. In all likelihood, when somebody loads up search terms that would pull up this article, they already know what a litter box is for. They also know that they need a litter box. You're not really telling them anything that they don't already know. That is the hallmark of a bad introduction. A good introduction goes to the heart of the nature of the product. These are not just litter boxes. These are specially designed for small spaces. So they're very specific products. So I like how this is set up. Litter boxes can literally stink up a joint, especially if you live in a tiny studio apartment or any other place where extra room is scarce. With that one sentence, the writer communicates to the reader that she understands the reader's problem. The reader is not interested in a litter box for a mansion or a big open space. Instead, they're interested in litter boxes for a small area. And by placing this information first, the writer communicates to the reader what's at stake. Litter boxes can stink, no matter the space, but it's especially hard and harsh if you don't have much space to work with. In that one sentence, the introduction is pretty much done because you have identified and connected with the reader, so the reader knows that you're on the same page. They are under the impression that you understand their problem. You then make a promise. Fortunately, the best litter boxes for small spaces are designed to help you creatively solve all the issues involved. Do you see how awesome that setup is? It's nice, tight, and elegant. And you introduce the challenge, but it's broken down in other little challenges. And these little challenges is explained below. So the key here is to set up the problem and then make a promise that you understand the factors that would point to the solution. She breaks down the different variations here of different types of solutions. And she comes up with alternatives. So if your bathroom doesn't have the right shape, there is a backup. There's still a solution. You just have to look at other factors. So the trick is to find a litter box that you can keeping in common areas. I hope you understand how this is set up and how it's different from this setup, but it follows the same objective. The key is to let the reader know from the first few lines that you understand their problem and you have a solution. Another approach is to ask questions. When you do this, you filter your audience. Somebody who's looking to buy a pole saw is going to be separated by this question from somebody looking to buy another kind of cutting equipment. And when you zero in on a specific interest, you then highlight the problem. So the person knows what they're looking for. So by posing this first question, you filter out people that may be on the fence or are quite unsure, and then you zero in on the ones that know that they want a pole saw, but they don't know which type. You then make a promise. If you don't know which type of product to pick, you've come to the right place. You then make a promise here, and then you follow it up by showing them more specifics. So a person is looking for a pole saw, and then it's defined more described more specifically here as the best pole saw for pruning trees. You see how this works? So a person who might have a broad idea of what they're looking for may start out with a general desire for a pole saw. But once we get to this point, which is just really 3 sentences away, you demonstrate expertise, because now you're saying that this pole saw is going to prune trees and also fits within your budget. Once a person looking for a pole saw to cut something high above, maybe it's a tree or some elevated place, they can see that you know what you're talking about. So they're more likely to read through. And once published, your articles are going to come with an image, and the reader will be given the impression that they've come to the right place. Because that's the problem they're trying to solve. How to cut something from a very high, that is at a high elevation. This is the overview of the solutions and then the factors involved. But all of this flows from a well-crafted introduction. So the one approach is to ask questions to filter the reader. Here's the problem. A lot of people who are not very good with introductions would ask a question that is completely unrelated. You're talking about pole saws, but you'll be asking questions about chainsaws or any other cutting equipment. That doesn't make any sense. Focus on filtering your reader. This goes straight to the point. Another approach is to lay out an overview of a common problem that people face. You then lay out the problem but zero in on a key topic. You then highlight the fact that this is a crucial problem, because even those who consider themselves professionals still find this challenging. You then follow up with an example and explain why it's not good enough. You then make a point of raising an alternative. You say to the reader, your understanding of the problem is not correct. Instead, you should go in this direction. You're making a claim that this is how they should go, and then you contrast that with how people normally deal with the problem, and why your approach is different. Again, it depends on your topic, but the key is to get the reader's attention to the point that they keep reading. Because once this is set up, the reader will get the impression that they're doing something wrong, because they're going about the problem the exact same way as everybody else. So you are promising that you're going to be using a different approach. Please focus on how you set up the reader so your introduction pulls them in, establishes your credibility, and starts the process of building their impression of your expertise as you go along in the article. This is how you write a solid introduction.